In today's episode of Locked On Pistons podcast, we finally dive into some draft prospects and why I believe the Pistons are going to have to trade up into the first round to get any of these prospects. We'll break it all down. Today's episode, Locked On Pistons podcast. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I am your host, Khahil. You can find me over on Twitter at Khahil. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen every single day. All of you everydayers out there, I appreciate all of you guys. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button on the YouTube channel, Locked On Pistons, or you can leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. It's another great way to support the podcast. We are less than 200 subs away from 11,000 subscribers. So if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. I really would appreciate it. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And make sure you guys check out the description down below for the Substack and for the playback. I just put out a breakdown about Santi Aldama and why I believe he would be a really good get for the Detroit Pistons this offseason. But today we are joined by friend of the podcast, Hal. He joins us every offseason to talk about the draft. It's now that time again. The Pistons don't have a first-round pick right now. They don't have a lottery pick for the first time, it feels like, in my life. But we still are going to talk about draft. They do have the 37th overall pick. I do think they're going to end up trying to trade up into the back end of the first round. That's why we're discussing these prospects. We're going to be talking about Maxime Raynaud. We got Liam McNeely, Noah Penda, and Noa Essengue. So we're going to talk about all of them. How are you doing, man? You looking forward to discussing some draft prospects, man?
It's good to be back. It's good to be back for draft season. It's one of my favorite times of the year. Yeah. I'm excited.
So let's go ahead and get into it. Also, I guess I should let you guys know, we're recording this on Wednesday because I'm getting my wisdom teeth, all four of them taken out the next day. So the next time you guys see me, probably on like Monday's episode, I'll probably look like Alvin the Chipmunk or whatever, because I'm going to be just completely messed up. So just want you guys
3 or 4 days. That's what they say it takes. 3 or 4 days for it to kind of start looking normal.
Yeah, it's gonna be it's gonna be rough. But all right, let's get into it. First prospect we're gonna start off with is Maxime Raynaud. But we're going to hear from Locked On NBA Draft first before we get into it ourselves.
Is a legit 7-footer with an all-around game that can make NBA front offices salivate. But somehow the Frenchman from Stanford, despite being 7'1", is wildly overlooked. How about this? Just one player in all of Division I last year averaged a 20-point, 10-rebound double-double, and his name is Maxime Raynaud. He profiles as a pick-and-pop 5 due to his high-level screening and knocking down just shy of 35% of his career threes at Stanford. But it's not just the outside. Raynaud has the ability to attack closeouts and get to the rim and finish. Growth is needed on the defensive side, where he is solid, but not an elite athlete, and that's going to force him to play drop coverage, which should be an issue against NBA pick-and-roll games. Now, given his size, you would expect more rim protection, but Raynaud's career block rate in college was just 3.5%. All the same, Raynaud's size and game are tantalizing enough that I expect him to hear his name called on night 1 of the NBA draft.
All right, Hal, so now also Locked On's very own Rafael Barlow, he has Raynaud 12th in his mock draft, which he has dropped, I believe last week he dropped it. So he has him 12th. So now, Hal, tell us, why should, first of all, like I mentioned earlier, will the Pistons have to trade up into the back end of the first round to be able to get this guy? Because they're at 37 right now. Would they have to do that? And then also, obviously, get into why should Pistons fans be interested in this prospect, and why would the Pistons be interested in this prospect?
Yeah, I think they'd have to trade up, and I think it's really just going to be this draft. You know, I've seen Raynaud. I think Roth Sport is the highest I've seen him at 12. I've seen him in the second round comfortably in the 40s. So it's all over the place, and that's true for most of the prospects in this draft. To be honest, this is it's a draft that lacks a lot of star power once you get out of the first couple names, and it's a draft full of international prospects. Raynaud went to Stanford, but we'll talk about 3 different people who are from France today. So because of that, people are all over. So this is going to be a draft where Trajan Langdon's going to need to do his homework and just kind of be comfortable with numbers on his board and see, you know, if he likes Raynaud, it's okay. You know, he slid past 12, he slid past 16, he slid past 22. You know, what's the number where you say, I can go get him? Do you have some things lined up? You know, the Nets have 2 picks at the end of the first round. Do you have something lined up where you can say, okay, we'll pull the trigger on something that's not not too costly and will move up? Is there something, where you're willing to maybe give up a little bit more? Maybe you give up a future first because one of these guys slides to like 18 and you're really excited about that. So you're probably gonna have to trade up for all four of the names we talked about today. Raynaud might be one of the ones that slides because his defense is probably the biggest concern. He's a bit like the Kelly Olynyk archetype, right? He's gonna shoot the three. He's got some post up stuff where he can mash switches, but he's gonna need some protection defensively. He is a true 7-footer, but he doesn't have crazy plus wingspan. He's got I think it's a 9'2" standing reach, which is pretty good for a big man, but it's not amazing. So you're interested in him because he comes in as an alternative to Stewart and Durant, right? You would have that counter punch, somebody who would hopefully let you play people like Asar and Ron who aren't shooters yet, right? You can put Raynaud in the corner. He's a great spot up shooter, and just say, okay, space the floor. We'll run Cade Asar pick and rolls, right? And we'll play out of that. We'll let Asar do short roll stuff, and Raynaud is over there. He'll hit the corner three on the kick out. And then he can also run some pick and rolls a little bit himself. He can do some off ball screening. It just gives you a lot of offensive options. And then defensively, you hope that maybe you're playing him with Stewart. You're playing him with Ron and Asar. You hope that the length and ball pressure from your other players can cover enough for him just 5 minutes, and hopefully he learns a little bit. He is, I think, 22. Yeah, 22 is what I've got for him. So he's a little bit older. He is a senior at Stanford. But you hope he can learn a little bit more defensively. He's kind of happy-footed and stuff still. So, it's just a nice gamble to make, really, because if it works out, great. If not, you've got two other big men on the roster that you're pretty comfortable with right now.
So before we move any further, I do want to say I just noticed on my screen I misspelled his name over there on the Today Show. I put an E instead of an A. That's my fault. I completely messed up on that. I missed on that one. That's my fault. Well, I want to ask you, how is this?
French spell everything weird. That's all.
We've seen a bunch of reports over the last few weeks with the Pistons involving them being interested in a stretch five. Would this be Would this be another way for them? It seems like he has that stretch five ability.
Oh yeah.
Would this be another way for them to try? They, like you mentioned, they can draft him, and because they have Stu and Durant, it's not like you're going all in on it, but it does give you that ability to be like, okay, we want to test it out. We want to see, does it actually peak higher than having, Ron and Durant, or Asar and Durant, two non-shooters on the floor? We can throw him out there. Like, do you have enough trust in him to where he can do that right out the gate?
Yeah, that part of his game, is pretty reliable. He was basically the highest volume big man shooter in college basketball last year. And, he didn't hit amazing percents, but part of that is that he took a lot of tough ones. Stanford didn't have a ton going for them. Beyond him, he was their offense. He is a 20-point per game scorer who shot, I think, 5 attempts per game. So I mean, he got him up. 35% isn't amazing, but it is, at that volume, it's pretty impressive. And I don't really have any concerns with that translating for him at all.
So where do you
great touch? He has great touch.
Where do you see what is his peak outcome in your opinion? What's the best outcome for Raynaud?
I think you're looking at Kelly Olynyk, right? That's in the secret for Olynyk is that he's a really good passer. I don't think Raynaud has that yet, so that's something that he would have to learn a little bit more to do the DHO type stuff to kind of unlock a little bit more fluidity in the offense. But that ability to take some shots, put the ball on the deck a little bit. He's a good slasher as well. He's not a lob threat, but if you give it to him with like the bounce pass and stuff on the move, he's pretty good there and finishing. So it's that kind of Kelly Olynyk, Swiss Army knife offensive piece. I don't see a guy where I'm like, oh yeah, that's definitely going to be a long-term starter. I don't see the kind of shooter. It's not like I see him being someone who's like, oh, he's got like Lowry Markkanen, where he can like become a movement shooter at 7 foot. But I think it's just this is a guy who hopefully gives you a rotation option that you can rely on for for changing things up. Probably not somebody you're going to build around, but nice tool to have in the bag.
So last thing before we move on to the next prospect, which will be Liam McNeely. So the place I always look at that the Pistons could trade up to, I just look at Brooklyn because they have four first-round picks. Now, Eric of Locked On Nets, new host, you guys go check him out. He mentioned that he thinks the Nets might use all those picks to try to go up further into the draft. So maybe that's what they do. But I don't think they use all 4 of them. So I feel like they're the most likely ones where the Pistons could trade up with. If Raynaud is there at 26 or 27, do you think he's a worthy person to go up and go after at 26, 27?
It depends on what they ask for, but given that they've got 4 picks, right, I think for the most part they're going to be like, hey, we just want to try and move some of that down the road. They can't really roster 4 people. So, I think the price should be fairly tolerable. And yeah, I think that's fine. I think that would be a fine move to make. The other thing is if the Nets do consolidate and move up, whoever they consolidate with, if they send 3 of these first-round picks to somebody, that person also now has 3 first-round picks, and they probably aren't going to want 3 players out of it. So, that those picks, 26 and 27 is the 2 they have that are back-to-back at the end of the first. Almost assuredly, one of those is going to move. It just doesn't make sense for people to hold on to it. So, and I think there's going to be plenty of movement because I think there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to want to take, who will take what could be a bad first-round pick next year or a later pick next year, and they'll gladly swap it for a pick in this draft because they don't like who they're seeing. I think teams will have a board that's 15, 16 players deep of people they trust, and the rest of the draft they're going to try and get out of.
Fair enough. All right, so coming up, we'll now talk about Liam McNeely and how he could be a fit for the Pistons and why he could be someone the Pistons go after in this draft. We'll talk about that, so stay tuned coming up. Guys, this is my favorite sponsor maybe ever. This is OLIPOP. I absolutely love this. I've been drinking I have a full counter of this over in my kitchen right now. I've drank all the vintage cola, which is my favorite flavor, but this root beer flavor, let's go ahead and do it live on stream. Live recording. I absolutely love this. I'm telling you guys. Favorite thing about it, it's a new kind of pop. I'm not going to say soda. I'm from Michigan. So it's a new kind of pop. You know how you drink pop, it has a lot of calories, a lot of sugar. It's not good for you. And especially if you're on a calorie deficit like myself, not good. You always want to drink water. Drink water is the best way to go. But sometimes you just want to mix it up. You'd like to have some flavor at some point. You don't want to torture yourself. And that's why OLIPOP is great. They have 35 calories. 35 calories in this. 0 grams of total fat and just 2 grams of sugar. This is, if you want an option where you can have some flavor, you can have some of that pop flavor that you're looking for, and you're trying to take a break from some water, this is it right here, man. I absolutely love it. Traditional sodas, like I said, I just said soda. My goodness, I should not have said that. Traditional pops is better, are loaded with sugar. But like I just said, this is a lot more healthy for you. It's helped me out a ton, especially, again, like I said, I've been cutting calories. And it's only 35 calories in a can. I love this version, the root beer. But my favorite is by far the vintage cola. You guys need to check it out. You can get a free can of OLIPOP. Just buy any 2 cans in store, and they'll reimburse you for one. Head to drinkolipop.com/LockedOnNBA to claim your free can and find OLIPOP near you. That's drinkolipop.com/LockedOnNBA. Before you end it, it's amazing. Check it out. drinkolipop.com/LockedOnNBA. My favorite sponsor. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I love it. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. We're less than 200 subscribers away from 11,000. I want to get there before the next season starts. So if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. I really would appreciate it. And I think this OLIPOP is already coming back to haunt me because now I just like last time we did the ad read, I couldn't stop myself from burping throughout the the podcast. But it's amazing. I truly do love it.
I got the pre-show pitch for the OLIPOP. That's how you know it's real.
It absolutely is. It is absolutely real. Hal, before we get into Liam McNeely, I want to ask you real quickly about this. There's been a lot of talk about. Like before, people were like, okay, the Pistons got the 37th pick like a few months ago. It's like, oh, yeah, that's like a late first-round pick. Like, you can get some value with that. I've seen a lot of discourse now that said, okay, that 37th pick really is bad now. There's a lot of players that went back to college that people are expecting to stay in. It sounds like a lot of draft, a lot of scouts, a lot of people I followed that covered the draft do not look at this draft anymore as deep as maybe they did a month ago. Do you back that opinion? Do you think the same way, or do you think there's still value to be found in the second round?
I think that's absolutely true. And I think you can still find value in the second round. He's going back for thirds now, guys.
It is too good.
I think the important thing to remember is that teams are not draft people, right? Like teams are not you and me where we look at a big board of 60, 70 people, right? Teams have, they scout everyone, but they have 10, 15, 20 names they like. And they order those names and they say, okay, this guy's still on the board, we're fine. This guy's still on the board, we're fine. All right, we're down to the last like 3 guys on our board. There's 20 picks, in between us. I don't want that pick anymore, right? We need to move that pick. We're not going to get one of the guys that we like, that we feel confident is going to be part of our organization. Who those guys are is different for every team, right? And it's different based on your scout. It's different based on the personality and the scheme of your team. It changes for everyone. So the fact that like I personally don't have a 60-person big board right now. I don't really have 6 people I like. That's fine if you're a team, right? You don't have to draft 6 people. You got to draft, 2, maybe 3 people. So it's definitely shallower because so many people went back to school because NIL has become such a big thing. There were a couple of international guys that went back and chose to withdraw from the draft. So it's definitely shallower than it was. And that means that you're going to have to be, you're going to have to nail your scouts, right? If you're going to be one of these guys picking, either A, you just kind of pick a guy and you say, okay, well, he's going to be on our summer league roster, or, you've got a few people that you really like that you hope are kind of hidden gems and, you're willing to bet on. And that's just, it's going to be a test of your scouting department.
All right, fair enough. And one of the guys that you wanted to talk about was Liam McNeely. So before we get into it, we're going to hear from Locked On NBA Draft on Liam McNeely.
May not have met expectations last year, but star freshman Liam McNeely sure turned heads. I'm Andy Patton, the Locked On College Basketball co-host. McNeely averaged over 14 points per game as a true freshman for Danny Hurley's club last year, looking like the best player on the roster throughout the season, which was even more true when the team really struggled while he sat with an ankle injury. McNeely's outside shot wasn't as good as it was advertised coming out of high school. The 6'7" wing shot just 31.7%, but NBA level spacing should help him improve that mark, and his 86.5% mark from the free throw line is a promising sign of things to come. McNeely is also a tenacious personality and relentless hard worker, and if he ends up on your team with a chip on his shoulder, oh boy, it could be a really fun rookie season.
All right, Hal, so before we get into it, Raphael has Liam McNeely at 37 on his big board. So Pistons have the 37th pick. Raphael seems to think that he might be around at that time. This is a small forward from UConn, 6'8", around 215 pounds. Why should the Pistons be interested in this player? What does he bring to the table? What kind of player is he?
McNeely's just really steady wing depth. That's what he is. He's he shot, I think, what do you say, 32% from 3 this year, coming off a foot injury. So there's, I think he would have shot better. UConn was also a little messy this year after a couple of title years. McNeely played with Cooper Flagg at Mount Verde and was awesome as an off the ball secondary creator, shooter. I got a lot of faith that the shot's going to be fine. Liam McNeely plays like a shooter. He's got a huge history pre-college of shooting. I think of him as like a Corey Kispert type, right? He's got a big frame. He's not a freak athlete, but he's strong. So he'll hold up defensively, physically. He'll hold a line. He's not going to beat people to the spot. He's going to be part of a team defense. But he just does a job, and he does a job really well. You can trust him to execute. You can trust him to make. He's going to make the kick out threes. He can do a little bit of playmaking by himself. He'll compete defensively. He's got limitations, but he's going to compete. That showed up repeatedly, even when he was coming off an injury. So if you're looking at this draft, especially if you're at 37, he's starting to slip, and you're saying we just want somebody that we're pretty sure can take the NBA floor. Kind of like an Isaiah Livers type, right? Livers didn't work out for the Pistons in part because he had so many injuries. But if you're like, hey, I just need a guy that I know can execute the basics, McNeely's going to do that. And if some things break right for him and the shooting really works, and some of the, he is a pretty good passer and kind of secondary creator ball handler. So if you end up getting more like the kind of like Luke Kennard secondary creation, where like he's not your point guard, but like okay, he's doing, he had a game where he got you 5 assists over here. That's kind of your upside there, is that he takes on a little bit more of a role, especially maybe with a bench unit. So McNeely's just a good solid contributor who I think is somebody who's probably going to be likely there late in the first and probably could slide into the second even.
So what is it, the negatives about him? Because I see some mock drafts, I'm looking at one right now where he's going at 12 and Raphael has him at 37. It seems like he's all over the place. So why is it that he's just, people are so, there's some people that are really high on him and some people are just really low?
Some people are going to look at the shooting numbers and they're going to say, okay, he shot poorly this year. And they're going to say, what was wrong there? Was it the foot injury? Was it something more? It's not like he was amazing before the foot injury, but he was pretty good in like catch and shoot situations. I think it was closer to like 40% in some of those. So it's going to be about like, okay, was he taking too many pull-ups? Was it a role issue and an injury issue, or was it maybe he's not as good a shooter as we thought, and maybe the NBA is going to press him a little bit more? And then I think it's mostly just going to be like, this is a below average NBA athlete. I think he's going to have the strength margin to kind of compete, especially if he's defending somebody's third wing, or they're like, I think he's the kind of guy who he can defend your like power forward. If you've got like a non-shooting power forward or something, he'll compete in there. He's not going to be your wing stopper. So if you're trying to take him at like 12, you're going to have a much higher belief in the offense and the playmaking, and you're probably not as worried about the defense. And if you're thinking, if you're putting him at like 40th on your board or something, the defense is probably where you're most worried.
So where would he slot in for the Pistons? If the Pistons did trade up and got him at 27, whatever, at Brooklyn, where does he slot in? Is he someone that's going to be a rotation player instantly, or someone that is going to be needing to be developed and maybe sees the floor 2 years from now?
I think he's your like Fontecchio replacement, right? It's hey, can we get him 12 minutes a game? As kind of a 3 when Ron's out there playing the 4, that kind of thing. He just joins that wing group, takes some mixed minutes as they come. You probably aren't worried about getting him 18 every game every night. And if he proves himself, then great. Then he can carve out a role. And every team wants 6'8" who can shoot. So if it all works out, great. If not, then you have certainly what Tech was doing last year is pretty replaceable. So that should be an easy role to fill.
And when you compared him to Corey Kispert, do you think that's his peak outcome?
Yeah, I think that's the kind of thing you're looking at. Kispert's got a similar thing where he's stronger than he is fast, though Kispert's got a little more bounce to his game, and he's got the same kind of broad frame. And obviously, Kispert is an elite shooter, and you hope McNeely gets back to that kind of production. Kispert obviously has had a lot more college production to go off of when he was drafted.
And he is going to be 19 years old at the time of the draft. Do you think he has some upside to him as well? Like, is this a guy that, because he's much younger, he theoretically could have some upside? Or do you think you basically know the kind of player he's going to be?
I think everybody has upside. I think you're looking at him and saying, can he become more of an on-ball player? That was something he did more at UConn. He didn't do it a lot at Montverde because Cooper Flagg dominated everything. So, can he become, can he transition to more of that like Luke Kennard on-ball creation that we saw like when Luke was in his like sophomore season? And you would hope you see some of those flashes. And if you don't, then at least you just got a rotation wing.
All right, fair enough. We'll wrap it up there. Coming up, we'll discuss both the Noahs, Noa Penda and Noa Essengue, and why the Pistons could be interested in both of those guys. We'll talk about that coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like the NBA playoffs. The NBA Finals could be wrapping up here pretty soon. I think it's over in 6, but the intensity, the buzzer beaters, the fans losing their minds, the kind of atmosphere you must experience live. And this year's matchups are already delivering. If you want in, Game Time makes it fast and easy to get the seats, even for the biggest playoff games. Prices on the app actually drop closer to tip-off, and with killer last-minute deals, seat views, and no surprise fees, Game Time is a total game changer. My favorite thing about Game Time by far is I get to see the view of my seat before I purchase. No more getting tickets, showing up to the game, surprised, shocked by what the seats are. No, I know exactly what I'm getting before I even have to purchase it. The app makes it so simple, 2 taps and I'm done. And with the Game Time guarantee, you know you're getting the best deal. If you find a better price in the same row and section, they'll credit 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets. with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed with Game Time. So I want to thank you guys again. Make Locked On Pistons your first listen every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. Check out the description down below for the Substack and the Playback. I have a film breakdown going over Santi Aldama over on the Substack. Real quick, yes or no, Hal, would you like Santi Aldama on the Pistons?
Love Santi.
Okay, perfect.
Good
You're on
player.
my side. You're on my side. All right.
You already know.
Let's go ahead and get into Noah Penda, and then we'll eventually get into Noa Essengue as well. But we don't have a video from Locked On Draft for Noah Penda, but we did get some input right before the podcast started. Rafael Barlow sent me over a brief description of how he feels about Noah Penda. I'm going to read that off, and then we'll hear from Hal how he feels. Rafael mentions, quote, Noah Penda is a strong physical forward who plays a smart team first game. He scores well in the post with good footwork and knows how to cut and move without the ball. He's a solid passer, can play both forward spots, and posted a positive assist to turnover ratio during the past season with it's a France top division team. I can't pronounce it. I'm not going to try. While he has some wing skills, he's most comfortable using his strength inside when he can't get by defenders. He's also a sneaky athlete. Most of the time he finishes below the rim, but every now and then he'll surprise you with an athletic play at the rim. However, Penda isn't very quick or explosive. He struggles to shoot from the outside and often drives into traffic, forcing some plays. Still, his strength, feel, and willingness to do the little things give him real value as a potential glue guy. All right, with that said, Hal, is there anything you disagree there with Rafael, and where do you stand with Penda?
No, I think he kind of nailed it. I mean, the physical profile, right? You're talking about a 6'7" dude who's 240, right? So that's that. If you're thinking like your Stanley Johnsons, really big, really built, carries that weight really well. It's all muscle, and he said it in the report. He's not a crazy athlete. It's all about strength, holding your line. It's kind of like what if Aaron Gordon didn't have the hops, right? So like you have this forward who you trust to do a little bit of ball handling, not like he's going to run pick and rolls, but he can slash, he can run in transition, he'll make the right play with the ball. There's some shooting there. He's going to need to get with a shooting coach and really work on some little things. I don't think it's like he's got something horrifying going on, but it's definitely going to be a work in progress. He is, not crazy old. He's 20 now, and it's just kind of one of those things where it's like he's a guy I've seen probably closer to like the 12 to 18 range is where I see him most. So he's one of those guys where he starts sliding towards the 20s, and you start wondering, is there value there? And he's a guy who just, plugs into any rotation spot and gives you, similar to like the Ron Holland thing of just like, he's going to give you effort. He's going to give you energy. It's not going to give you spacing. So you're going to have to work around that. But he's the kind of guy who like a playoff caliber defender. Like, he's the kind of guy where he can give you, the kind of Lou Dort, he's putting up a wall and you're not getting through him. He's got that kind of physicality. He can be a little bit of a gambler. So if he's got some things that, you want him to improve on over time. But we see, we're seeing all playoffs long now, right? That it's those big physical defenders, right? Physicality is a bigger margin than shooting even has been in some of these playoff games. And Penda's the kind of guy who can add that to a rotation.
So before we get even further into Penda, I do want to say you brought up the playoffs. Me and Matt have talked about this on the podcast a bit. I forget who it was that started it last year, but like I've watched these playoffs, and my biggest takeaway from these playoffs, at least for me, has been you really just you will go as far as your weakest defender allows you to go. Like you have to be these teams now. Like there are no pick on defenders. There are no just bad defenders. You need everyone on the floor to be able to hold up, like you mentioned, be extremely physical. I mean, Alex Caruso talks about all the time how he put on so much muscle, so much strength, and so much, so he gained so much weight from the muscle, obviously, so he could be more physical. You're watching OKC, but not even just OKC. I mean, Nembhard is being extremely physical with SGA. Like, Neesmith is being extremely physical with SGA. So look, I'm at a point now where, like you mentioned, I almost value that more than shooting at this point. Like I'm getting close to that where I'm like, I just want a team full of guys that if I can trust if I throw on the basketball floor are just walling guys up, or I'm not worried about them just getting blown by nonstop, and I can trust them to defend. So with that said, is that it sounds like that's what you expect with Penda. That's something you think he can.
I think Penda's big thing is he's strong as heck. He's got, legit wing size, 6'7", 6'11", almost a 7-foot wingspan, right? So he's got legit size, legit strength. He's pretty good on the ball. He's smart. He knows where to be. He rotates really well. Like, he is a plus defender right now with, plus physicality for the role. So if you're asking him, to defend an opponent's, second best wing and just go out there and compete at a high level, I think he's going to give you that. And so I think that's really valuable. I think we're seeing that you can survive poor shooting if you've got consistent defense. And shooting is such a surplus, right? Or not a surplus. It's so pricey right now, right? It's so hard to find shooting that doesn't come with terrible downside, that if you don't have enough shooting, the best thing you can do is just get 5 defenders on a string with, that have a high compete level, and the Pistons are already well on their way to that. So adding Penda is just adding another tool there.
All right, and before we move on to Essengue, Penda, is there any kind of upside that you believe in offensively that makes you believe he can be not a poor offensive player and good defender, where he can become a two-way defender or a two-way player? Do you believe in that, and where do you think he slots in with the Pistons if they were to draft him?
Well, he's a really smart connector. He's not like a Sar Thompson where he's like blowing your mind with some of the reads he's making, but he's just a smart connector. He'll make the right play consistently, and he's big enough that if you want to use him as like a little short roll passer and stuff like that, that's great. If the shot comes around and he can give you like the PJ Tucker corner 3, while also being the big defender, then you've got a real weapon where you don't have to worry about him on the floor, right? Until the shot comes around, you're gonna have to be a little more creative with how you use him. You're going to be a little more limited in the lineups you put him in. But certainly if he can hit just, the 35, 36% from 3 and start making that, something that people at least kind of respect, then you're going to have, a pretty good player on your hands.
All right, so let's go ahead and get Essengue now. This is who, where is it? I just lost it. I just lost where Raphael had him on the big board. Either way, this is the other Noah we were going to talk about.
Yeah.
Why if I just I can't find his name? It was right here. I scrolled accidentally too far down, and all right, forget about it. Sorry, Raphael. I lost where you had him on the big board. It is what it is. All right, Hal, can you explain to us the type of player he is? Here he is, ace. He has him 8th on the big board.
Yep.
Thank you. I found him. He was.
I figured he'd be higher on Roth's board.
Yeah, I was going to say I thought he was the highest one, and I just was missing him, but. So you got Noa Essengue. He has him 8th on his big board. How do you feel about him, Hal? Why is he so high? And if he's 8th, how could the Pistons possibly be able to get him?
He's another one. It's all over the place. And he is kind of a 4 who's under 200 pounds right now, right? So you're talking about somebody you probably want to play power forward, who's 6'9", 7-foot wingspan, but only 195. So you're talking tall and real slim right now. Much bouncier than Penda is, though. Really fluid athlete, great transition player, but there's still a lot of just question marks around Essengue. So if you really believe in his tools and what he flashes, you're going to have him 8th, and if you don't, he's going to be way lower on your board. I've seen some people who are like they don't even want to draft him because they're not really sure. He shoots it a little bit, but not enough. He's not a shooter, right? It's like, okay, this could be something in a few years. He's a really interesting perimeter defender. He can switch out onto guards, but it's not consistent, right? There are flashes. He's got the athleticism. He doesn't have the fundamentals. There's plenty of reason to believe that he could play the 5 eventually if he puts on real muscle. And he's got the length. He's got the ability to backpedal, but the technique isn't there yet. And the muscle isn't there yet. He's got the ability to cover defensively, cover a lot of ground, but your bigger power forwards are going to, like a Tobias Harris is going to eat him alive, just bullying through his chest. So you have a guy with a lot of potential and who has a lot of work to do, right? And it's not unlike, Ron Holland to me, where Ron comes in and you see it and you're like, okay, I believe in a lot of what Ron does. And in 2-3 years, when some of the skill comes around and some of the physicality is there and he bulks up a little bit, I think Ron's going to be great. And Essengue is kind of in the same mold where even if you believe in him, you probably don't believe in him being like a major contributor this year, but the potential is really high. And he's one of those guys where I think a lot of teams are going to have him, they might have him 8th, 9th, 10th on their team board. But because of the chaos of this draft, if everyone else is getting their first, their 5th, 6th player on the board, and people keep finding those guys, that's where someone like Essengue can start to slide. Where if everyone has him 8th, but they don't have the same players ahead of him, you start having a guy who's at 15, 16, and suddenly you're out of the lottery. And do you want to take a gamble on a guy like that who maybe could be, not your Tobias replacement in the same vein, but like maybe he's got the talent to be the power forward of the future. Maybe he's got the talent to be, if Asar or Ron become the forward of the future, maybe this guy is the bench, creator. On the other hand, the downside is maybe you've got another Sekou Doumbia, right? You've got another French forward with all the tools, and that just never quite figures it out.
So he's 6'9", around 194 pounds right now. He is going to be 18.
Yeah,
18
he's still young
at the time of the draft. So it sounds like this is obviously a very young prospect that you kind of have to mold and give time to develop. Do you believe do you trust the Pistons to where they're at right now to have a player on that maybe isn't ready to play right now and just needs to be developed behind the scenes? Is that something you think that could be enticing to the Pistons?
I guess I'm mixed on it because they didn't use their G League team last year, which I thought was interesting, right? We did not see Ron go to the G League. We didn't really see anybody go down there. We brought a few guys up and down. Harper, I think, was one of the guys that they brought up and down a few times, but we didn't really see them utilize it very aggressively. And Essengue might be a guy that gets some run there while you let him figure some things out. And they are pretty deep on like the athletic wing room when it comes to Asar and Ron at like the 3. So the real question is, what are you going to do with Tex minutes? What are you going to do? Is Stewart going to play some 4 for you, or is he going to stay as the 5? You got to figure that out. I think the development staff, I think, showed out last year. I think everyone came in and showed you more than you probably expected. At least certainly for me, I felt like everybody came in and performed at a high level, which I think speaks highly of the development staff there. You've got one of the best shooting coaches around in Fred Vinson. That all speaks well. And JB was willing to let Ron cook, even when Ron was cooking something that didn't look so great. So that, it's nice. I was worried about that with Ron, that like, would he, just go crazy and, JB just like yank him and bench him for a week. And we didn't really see that too much. So like, if that same leash is given to someone like Essengue, then, I think it would be pretty fun and worth seeing what happens.
All right. And real quick, before we wrap it up, where do you see a peak outcome for him? Like, what is your peak comparison if you have one?
It's a tough one because he could be, he could do anything from like the Jeremy Grant path to, like a Thon Maker thing and a Sekou thing. It could be all over the place. He could end up playing like the Jared Vanderbilt, effort energy 5 thing as the undersized 5. We could be seeing more of like a Zeke Naji outcome. There's all sorts of things just because he's got so many tools, but none of it's really locked into any one form or style yet. He mostly just played as kind of like a transition runner, a little bit of a role threat. But I think what he is long term is still very open, and going to be really dependent on the team that drafts him and how they want to use him.
All right, we'll wrap it up there. Last thing I want to ask you, how quick, yes or no, if you had to predict right now, do the Pistons trade up into the first round?
No.
Right,
can I follow it up though and say I think they don't make a pick?
Oh, okay.
I think the pick moves with something else, and they use it to maybe bring in another veteran as they try and shuffle the Tim Hardaway Jr., Fontecchio, those kind of minutes around.
I mean, I accept that as well if that's the outcome they take. All right, appreciate you, Hal, for coming on, man.
I don't think it's going to be a quiet night. I'll tell you that much.
I mean, I hope not. I mean, I've been one of the loudest people saying,
And-
please do something.
and
But
we've got 2 nights now.
oh my
right?
God, I low key forgot about that.
Yeah, so you're gonna have a chaotic first night of the draft because something's going down, and then you're just gonna have a real weird second day. I think where everybody's just trying to take a good long breath, and we'll get a bunch of like tiny little trades and swaps and things, and we'll see what happens. But making this a 2-day event is it's gonna be wild.
I can't wait to see how it goes. It could be very interesting. But I appreciate you guys for listening. You guys can follow Hal over on Twitter at HalBridius. Thank you, Hal, as always, for coming on. Might have you on again to talk more some more draft. If we get any more clarity on what maybe the Pistons make a move before the draft even happens, and we get some more clarity on it. We'll talk more about it then. But appreciate you guys for making Locked On Pistons your everyday listen. First listen of every single day. Thank you guys for hitting that subscribe button. If you haven't already, please do that. Leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Stay safe out there. And until next time, peace out, everybody. And hopefully I can speak again by the time you guys listen to this. Please pray for me.